Hi, my name's Shane Caudle from Epic Games, and I'm going to give you an overview of the new Unreal Editor from an artist or a environment artist perspective. I guess the first thing we'll do is go over the UI a bit. So let's go up here to the left. Here you have a modes tab, and this goes through a few different tools that primarily level designers will be using, but we'll use a few things out of there in this artist demo as well. Below that, we have the content browser, and this is kind of the library of all the things that you've brought into the game, either from, external packages like 3D Studio Max or Photoshop or whatever, audio, it doesn't matter, it all kind of be in here. There's really nothing in here right now because this is a blank project. Up here at the top, this is your buttons for simulating and playing and launching on device and that kind of thing. Over to the right, we have the scene outliner, and that's kind of just an overview of all the things that are in your scene. So you can see if I select this ground plane here, it'll select it up here. And you can just, if you want to hide things, you can do that by toggling the eyeball. If you double click something up here, it will center on it. So like if I click on the sky sphere, double click it, it's going to zoom way out. Then if I click on the floor again, double click it, it'll zoom me right back into the floor. Below that, we have the details panel, and that's kind of whatever you have selected, it'll show you all of the items that pertain to that thing that you can change. So the transform is basically your location, rotation, scale, that kind of thing, the mobility of it, which is if it's a static or moving object. This here's the static mesh that it's using, so you could easily swap that to a different one if you had another one loaded. We just don't have any right now in this project. And then the material that's applied to it, all that kind of stuff. And then the main view here is your 3D view, and you can see I'm moving around in here. So one way of moving around in here is if you use the left mouse button, you can just kind of motor around on the X and Y axis. And then if you use the right mouse button, you can orbit the camera and look up and down, left to right, however you want to do, but you're still in that same location. And then if you use both left and right mouse buttons, you can move up and down and left and right. So in the culmination of all of that, it's really easy to get to where you want to look at in the world, as you can see. Also, you can use the FPS controls like WSAD to fly around as you're pressing the right mouse button. And you can also as well use the arrow keys. So if you're left-handed or right-handed, you kind of have both of those sets of controls on both sides of the keyboard. Also, the Q and E keys will move up and down if you want to do that way. And you can see now that I'm flying around pretty quickly. So if I want to change that while I'm pressing my right mouse button, if I just scroll back on the mouse wheel, you can see now I'm going nice and slow. So if you want to get right up on something and look at it, it's easy to do. Or if you want to go fast, you can scroll it forward and fly across the map super fast. So it depends on the size of your world and what you're trying to look at, but it's really easy to navigate. Another really cool thing about the editor is it's totally customizable. So you can see I can drag these windows around to size them however I'd like. I can make, this smaller or whatever. You can also drag these tabs around. So if I drag this tab off in the main view here, you can see that it puts a quadrant view over everything. So if I put it right in the middle quadrant, it's just going to make a floating tab out of this. So I can put this wherever I want. It can overlap things. Or if I drag it into one of these quadrants, you can see that it does a little grayed out version of it taking up that space. So hey, I could dock it right there, whatever. And all these views have that, so I could dock it over here beside this one if you want to see both at the same time. You can dock it at the top here. You can also dock it as a tab beside this tab, so you can just toggle between the two like that. So it's really customizable and user friendly to kind of configure it however you want to work and what's best for what you're doing right then and how you want to see the data that you need. So as an artist or a environment artist, you're primarily going to be bringing in assets that you're creating externally in other packages like 3D Studio Max or Maya or Photoshop or whatever. So let's just go ahead and show you how that works. I'll just go ahead and pop over here to 3D Studio Max. Here's a rock I've created on ZBrush, and I textured it in ZBrush and then I brought it into Max and processed this low poly version against that to pull off the textures and normal maps and everything. And so now I want to bring this low poly mesh into the editor. So let's go look at the material real quick. The easiest way to do this is just set the materials up in here. If you do that, then you can just pop them into the editor automatically. So if I go up here a bit, so you can see I have the diffuse channel applied, and then I have a normal bump on it with the normal map applied. And so let's just take this asset now and bring it into the editor. So let's select it and then go to File, Export Selected, and we'll overwrite the FBX that I already have in that place. So we definitely want to do the smoothing groups, and one thing you'll definitely want to make sure that you have checked after it's done auto-saving here. Scroll down to the advanced option and go to the FBX file format and make sure that's on 2013 because that's the latest one we're using. And hit OK, and I'll export that mesh out. And we'll minimize that, pop back over here. So let's go to the game folder here over in the content browser and right click and let's make a new folder called meshes. And we'll bring this mesh into there. The way this is structured, you can kind of structure your data however you want. So a lot of times people will make a meshes folder and they'll put the meshes in there, and then it may make a materials folder that has the textures and materials, or some people will want to put a folder per asset and just put the mesh, the material, and the textures all in that folder. So it's kind of up to however you want to structure your data, how you do that. So to import the mesh, we can go up to the import button here. Or you can actually right click into the empty space inside that folder and go import. And then we'll select our rocky mesh and bring it in. Let's open up this advanced tab quickly. So there's combine meshes button here that if you have a mesh that's made up of multiple meshes in 3D Studio Max, and you dump them out, this will combine all of that into one mesh and bring it in as one thing. Or if you uncheck that, you can have multiple meshes inside the file and bring them in, and it'll create multiple meshes inside the editor with just one import option, which is another option which can be handy if you have a bunch of meshes you want to bring in together. Down here under material, if you go check material and import textures, it'll actually bring those across from 3D Studio Max. So I'll turn those on. Another option that you might want to know about is the vertex coloring. So if you have vertex colors on your mesh that you want to bring in, you'll want to turn that on, and that way if you re-import it, it'll re-import those as well. So let's just go ahead and hit import. And now you can see that it's brought our mesh in and the material and the two textures. So now we could actually just drag this mesh out into the world, and you can see there's the rock that we just had in 3D Studio Max. Now it's inside the editor. It's a little big, so let's just go and scale it down a bit. So I have it selected, so go over here to the scale tab under the transform, and you see this little lock button here. If you turn that on, it'll lock all three of these axes together so you can uniformly scale it. So if I say like 0.5, you know, it'll scale it all down uniformly. And if you hit spacebar, it'll cycle between the different gizmos. So that's like the rotate gizmo, that's the scale gizmo, and that's the translate gizmo. So you can go ahead and move this guy around inside the editor and get it to see however you want to look at it. You can see here that the backside is pretty dark, so it's not really simulating the scene very well. And to fix that, what you need to do is go up here to the lighting tab under modes, and let's just drag a skylight in here. And what that does is it captures the scene, the lighting of the scene, and generates a cube map out of it basically, and uses that to light the mesh. So you can see now I'm getting some bounce light on the back side of this guy, which is nice. Also, so this is just kind of the basic material for this guy, right? So if I just go ahead and pop open this material so we can check it out, I can drag it up here to dock it so we'll have a bigger view of it. It kind of stacks the stuff up that it brings in on top of it for now. So let's just go ahead and reorganize this a little bit, make it a little more readable. So now we have a texture and a normal map, and then their texture coordinates. And this is pretty much your standard basic material, right? So let's just go ahead and say we want to make this a little more interesting, because right now if we hit apply, it'll apply that back over to the editor. We can pop back in here and see it again. So right now, I mean, this is a really big rock, so it's got a 2K texture on it, but it's covering a huge surface area. So we may want to make this look a little better up close. So what you can do is let's just go down here and right click in this folder and then bring in a couple more textures. So let's go import again, and I have a tiling rock, diffuse, and normal map here that I want to bring in. So I'll just select both of those and bring those in. Okay, now that we have those imported, we'll just select one of those, and let's go back over to the material. And we want to augment this main material by adding in these other textures so that when you get up close to it, you see the detail in those as well. So let's, now that we have that selected, if you hold down T and click into the viewport, it will add that texture in here automatically. So let's bring that one in. Now let's do the normal map. So if we select it, pop back over here and hold down T and click, it'll add that one in as well. So now we want to add these two together. So let's just go and add node. So in the material editor here, we have a big palette of things over here on the right, but if you just drag off of node, it'll give you kind of the same options as well. And so if we want to do an add node, we could type add up there and get it, or you could also type the plus symbol and get it that way. So here's our add. So we want to add this texture and this texture together and drag that back to the base color. So let's move this up here. And then we want to add these two together as well, the normal maps. But before we do that, I'd like to do something else to this normal map before we add it to that one, because you don't want to add the blue channels together. Really, it doesn't look good. So let's go ahead and do a multiply on the bottom normal map. And you can get to that by typing multiply or typing in the multiply sign. And then we want to multiply it by a constant value, so our 3 vector, so we can augment each channel individually. So you can type constant. It's a constant 3 vector. You can see here there's different ones, so I could just click constant 3 vector there, or I could do it by pressing 3 and click, and that'll give you the same thing. You can do that for the 2 or the 1 as well. We'll put the 1 up there because I'm going to use that in a minute. So now we have a constant 3 vector. So if I select this and then open up the drop down over here on the left, I want to multiply the red by, let's say, like 0.7, the green by 0.7, and the blue by 0. Now we want to add the output of that to the main texture map. So we can just, we can copy and paste the add down here, and we can reuse it. Now we've added those two together. Now we'll just run that into the normal app. Let's straighten all this out a little bit. More readable. So now we have 2 normal maps and 2 texture maps being added together. And the thing is, right now they're just adding them at the same scale, but we want the detail normal map and the detail texture to be tiled more, so as you get up close you see that high resolution detail up close. So when we made this material, by default it automatically adds these nodes, but they're just set to tiling of 1, which is the default, so we don't really need that hooked up there. So let's just blow that one off of the top texture, and we're going to hijack the other one and drive it into the tiling normal map and the tiling texture, and let's just break this link to the main normal map. And let's change this text chord tiling to like 16, so we get a bunch of tiles of it across there on both axes. So do 16 and 16. And now we have that added to it, and you can see as I zoom up to it here, you get much more high frequency detail up close. This is a sphere, so it's not really that handy to look at. So you can go through different primitives here to see the box, cylinder, cone, whatever. So if I go back over to the content browser and select our actual mesh, we can actually just use our actual mesh. So if I use the teapot there, it'll actually put the texture on our actual mesh, which looks good. This texture does seem a little bit bright to me, so there's a couple ways you could fix that. You could go and change the actual texture in Photoshop and re-import it, or you can just do something simple right here. Let's just add a multiply in here to the output of both of these before I run it into the base color, and then let's just multiply it by 0.5 and see what that looks like. So that gives us a little darker of a rock. So if we hit apply now, pop back over, you can see it's a little darker, but it's still like shiny and stuff, so we need to change some of these other values. So let's go back to the material. You can see there's a metallic, specular, and roughness properties. So I got this 1 vector constant out here a minute ago, so let's use that to run it into the metallic section. And rocks aren't very metallic, so let's change that to, let's like 0.05. Let's try that. And then let's duplicate that a couple times and change these other values as well. So let's make the specular like, let's say 0.1 because rocks aren't very shiny, and change the roughness to, let's say, like 0.5 because they're pretty rough. And that's starting to look more like rock. And if you don't like this grid being on in here, you can just turn it off right there. So now you can get right up on the rocks and see some of that finer detail. So if I hit apply now, that's going to dump that back over to the editor. And hey, we have a pretty decent looking rock now. Let's go ahead and take a couple of this rock and make a couple of copies of it and rotate them around. I made this rock to be pretty universal, so if I hold down Alt and drag, it'll actually just make a copy for me, and spacebar to rotate it around. So, I could make me a little rock cliff here. Let's do another one. A little cave almost, and we can rotate it around this way. And it's rotating right now on world space, but you could set it to local space if you wanted by changing this button up here. These are all your navigational or rotation and stuff controls for objects. So this is move, rotate, scale. This is your transform. So this cycles between world and local. And these are your snaps. Drop down gives you the other options you can change it. And that's rotation. And this is your snap. The grid snap value. So now we've made a few of these guys. Let's make another one here. It's kind of got an overhang a bit. Let's go back to world space. So we made a little faux cliff wall here. Trying to do is just kind of set up a little kind of scene to see what this looks like with real lighting. Because right now it has the preview lighting on, so you don't get the full GI lighting. So we'll go ahead and rebuild lighting in a second here. And to do that, you just go up here to build, and I'll unselect everything so you can see a little better. If you drop down build, you can say this just shows you what build you want to do. Like you can build and you can change your lighting quality to production preview or whatever. Before we do that though, there's one thing we want to do on the meshes. So let's open the static mesh itself here and zoom out a bit. And if you go down here to the light map resolution, we probably want to turn this up to like 128 or something. So, and this lets you also pick, what light map UV channel you're using and all that kind of stuff. So right now, we're just going to use the same UV channel as channel 1 because it's uniquely unwrapped. It should be fine for using it as the light map channel. So we'll just leave it to 0. That's right here. We want to leave that to 0. And we can hit save on that guy. We can save our material here. And then we'll go back over to the editor real quick, and then let's go ahead and hit build. And what this is doing is sending out to the light mask to build the lighting, and it'll have full ambient occlusion lighting then, and all that kind of stuff. So now you see it's giving me a little error here. It's just because I'm using channel 0 and it thinks there's overlapping UVs, which there actually isn't. It's just really close to the edge of the edge of the UV space. So now you can see that, hey, we have actual shading and GI and lighting and shadows baked in. Also, another cool thing is you can see all these icons in the world that you don't really like looking at. If you go ahead and hit G here, that's game mode, and it'll simulate game mode so that you can hide all the editor specific things like the grid and icons and things like that. So hitting G will give you more of a feel of how this looks in the world. Also, you notice there's a little joystick icon here. So if I drag this, over here a bit, and you see the blue arrow, the bigger blue arrow, that's kind of where you're going to be looking when you spawn. So this is the player spawn point. So I could rotate this around, so it's kind of pointing at the little cave entrance or whatever. And then if I go up here and hit play, if you do the drop down, you can play from selected a new editor window, standalone game, mobile preview, or selected viewport active. Or you can use it at the current camera location or the default player start. So right now it's on default player start. So when I hit play, it's going to start me right where I had that little the joysticky thing at. So now I'm actually playing like I'm in the game. I can actually run around and look at these rocks from all angles and that kind of thing. You can also hit F11 and it'll go full screen on you so you can get a real good view of everything. And F11 will pop you back out, and then if you hit escape, it'll pop you back out of there. So that's kind of an overview of bringing a mesh in and putting material on it and getting it in your world and checking it out. And I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching.